This report is brought to you by Cerule, makers of a new category of plant-based products scientifically proven to naturally increase the number of adult stem cells in circulation. This offers a variety of benefits to reduce the effects of human aging. I have a nagging tennis injury, a rotator cuff shoulder problem. Surgery is pretty iffy, so I've been a long-time user of glucosamine products. They don't help much, but that has been my only alternative. So I gave it a try. The rep told me that it would usually take several months before any noticeable difference would occur. First week, nothing. Second week, maybe a little better. But then by the third week, all of a sudden I realized it was a lot better. All I can say is Stem Enhance has worked for us, and non-invasively. Yes, I could have paid $5,000 to have a stem cell injection into my shoulder, but it wears off. Why not stimulate the body's natural ability to generate the stem cells itself, which then travel naturally wherever they are needed for a fraction of the cost? One visit to a doctor can cost more than a month's supply of this product. There's a lot of science behind this. I wouldn't be advertising it otherwise. This works. Check out their website at billstill.cerule.com. There's also a 30-day money-back guarantee on a single bottle purchase, so you can try it risk-free.
Good evening. I'm still reporting on the coup. I'm becoming unsure that the United States of America is going to survive the last year of the Biden presidency. This last week saw Biden meet with Chinese paramount leader Xi Jinping in San Francisco, while one of his primary propaganda weapons, TikTok, runs wild across America and at least is partially responsible for the surprising numbers of pro-Hamas demonstrations in major cities. Well, here's why. In the last week of October, the TikTok algorithms allowed nearly 5 times as many pro-Palestine posts as pro-Israel posts. As Maria Bartiromo put it on her show this morning,
none of this, of course, came up during a reported 4-hour meeting, which included a walk through a garden for Xi and Joe.
2 things of interest here. Old-timers and the intelligence community always preach that when you have something to say that must remain a secret, you take a walk outdoors. Have you ever seen 2 world leaders walking alone through the woods before? I don't believe I have. So what could they have been talking about that demanded this level of privacy? According to my sources, Joe and Jill Biden are scared to death of being tossed out of office before the election and then being charged with bribery, if not treason. So maybe Joe is asking his old buddy Xi for advice, or maybe a guarantee of political asylum should they and/or other members of their families need it. And one last thing, notice that they're talking together without interpreters. In other words, they are speaking English to each other. Xi has always pretended that he did not speak English, but President Trump flushed that out when he announced in English, when Xi visited Mar-a-Lago, that he had just ordered an airstrike in Syria in English. And before the translators could translate, the paramount leader blurted out, "Could you repeat that?" So it's interesting times ahead, that's for sure, with the distinct possibility that if America survives this, some of the Bidens could flee sentencing from U.S. court to China. Then China would refuse to extradite them. Talk about unprecedented. Let's jump back to Maria.
The White House claims the 2 leaders agreed to restart communications between their militaries, while China would help to, quote, curb the flow of deadly fentanyl into America.
Oh, great. General Milley can call up his Chinese counterpart and tell them about American troop movements. Whose side is who on? Back to Maria.
And in return, the U.S. is lifting sanctions on the companies involved in surveillance and human rights abuses in Xinjiang. China gets what it wanted, sanction relief, while the U.S. gets a promise, likely an undeliverable, while also getting pummeled by misinformation and propaganda on CCP-controlled social media. There's also no evidence that the commander-in-chief confronted Xi over the origins of COVID-19 that killed more than 1 million Americans, or the cover-up that followed.
Then Tom Cotton, the brilliant senator from Arkansas, came on and absolutely nailed it.
We gave concrete concessions to China, like lifting sanctions against entities and persons involved in genocide against religious and ethnic minorities in China. China only gave us promises. For instance, the promise to stop shipping precursor chemicals for deadly fentanyl to Mexico. That's probably about as valuable as Xi Jinping's promises to Joe Biden's old boss, Barack Obama, that China would stop cyber attacks or that they wouldn't put rockets and missiles on the islands they built in the South China Sea. I've long said that we should ban TikTok, and I think the last few weeks have shown why it's so urgent that we ban it. It's not just that it puts the data privacy and security of all Americans at risk, but now it's turned into a propaganda machine for Chinese communists. You even mention how TikTok boosted videos saying that Osama bin Laden had a point about attacking America on 9/11. Just imagine what TikTok would do if we ever came to blows with China over Taiwan. So if Congress passes a major aid bill next month for Ukraine and Israel and Taiwan to secure our border, we should also include a flat-out ban on TikTok in America as well.
Well, is it not extraordinary that you're calling for a flat-out ban, as are so many governors, by the way, across the country, banning TikTok, certainly from their state governments of using it, but at the same time, Joe Biden and the Democrats want to use TikTok for their campaigning for the upcoming election?
This has probably resulted in part from Joe Biden's polling collapse, especially among young voters or other core Democratic constituencies. The campaign is desperate to do anything, even use a Chinese propaganda app to try to offset Joe Biden's decline in the polls. Joe Biden's campaign shouldn't do it, and President Biden should sign a total ban of TikTok into law next month. Yeah, Maria, it's a good point that what you've seen with TikTok over the last few days makes it clear that TikTok is not just going to be used to promote communist China, but to undermine the United States and our friends at every turn. It's going to happen in Israel. It's happening here at home as well.
Then Senator Cotton says that unless Biden gets tough with Iran, will never happen, then Iran is on the verge of causing some sort of mass casualty event at one of our military installations in the Middle East as their next step, thanks to Biden's weakness.
And Iran has attacked American forces more than 60 times in just the last month. That makes probably more than 125 times since Joe Biden took office.
Did you realize how many of these unanswered attacks there have been by Iran recently, most of which Biden has not responded to? I can only remember brief mentions here and there in the media that left the impression that it was not much to worry about.
But in the last month alone, more than 60 times, we've only hit back 3 times. We've only hit back against sites that are either empty or only has Iran's proxies, not, for instance, their Revolutionary Guard Corps shock troops. Obviously, this is doing nothing to scare or deter the Ayatollahs. It's only emboldening them, because after every one of those 3 strikes, they've only hit back harder against our troops. We're going to have a mass casualty attack against the United States forces in the Middle East unless President Biden scares the Ayatollahs straight. And the only way to do that is to target what they hold most dear. For instance, when Ronald Reagan sank half of Iran's Navy in 1988, after they had struck a U.S. Navy vessel, or when Donald Trump killed their terrorist mastermind, Qasem Soleimani, in Iraq in 2020. Until we target Iran's own people and assets, the Ayatollahs will not be scared of killing Americans.
Why is this president so soft on our adversaries, Senator?
Well, I think Joe Biden's been wrong about nearly every major foreign policy and national security decision going back now 50 years. He's consistently appeased and conciliated our adversaries. He's granted them one-sided concessions just because of his bad judgment and his ideological aversion to American strength and confidence. I also think you have to question whether or not Joe Biden is concerned about his ties to a country like communist China. It's an undisputed fact that the Biden family has earned millions, maybe tens of millions of dollars from communist China-linked enterprises, and also from other countries all around the world. So in addition to Joe Biden's ideological weakness, I think we also have legitimate questions that need to be answered about whether Joe Biden is compromised by his family's dealings with some of these American adversaries.
I'm still reporting from just outside the citadel of world freedom. Good day.